Hey there, and welcome to this explainer. If your financial journey feels agonizingly slow right now, like you're literally carrying this crushing, heavy weight on your shoulders just trying to get ahead, well, you're definitely not alone. Today, we're breaking down the unrelenting physics of why your progress feels so impossible right now. But more importantly, we're going to look at how to break free. We're talking about the concept of escape velocity and the actual physics behind your first $100,000. Okay, let's dive into this. Have you ever felt like you're just running on a financial treadmill? You know the feeling. You're working hard, you're saving wherever you can, and you're playing exactly by the rules you were taught. But then you check your accounts and the needle barely moves. It's like every single step forward is met with the universe finding some way to push you 2 steps back. Meanwhile, you look around at the wealthy, and it seems like they've got some sort of cheat code, right? They're getting richer without even breaking a sweat. It is incredibly frustrating to feel like you're doing everything right but getting absolutely nowhere. But the truth? It isn't that they have some grand secret. They didn't just get lucky. It's actually just math. So let's start with phase 1, the linear illusion. To really understand why the beginning of this journey is so incredibly painful, I want you to picture something. Imagine you're pushing a massive, dark basalt sphere up a steep, rocky mountain. For the first several miles, it is pure agonizing labor. You're sweating, your muscles are screaming, and the absolute worst part, if you stop pushing for even a single second, that massive heavy stone starts rolling backward, right back into debt. And that leads us to the linear illusion. Basically, it's our brain's deeply flawed expectation that wealth is going to grow in a straight, predictable line. As humans, we're just wired to think this way. If you work 40 hours, you expect 40 hours of pay. If you save $500 this month, your brain demands that you feel exactly $500 richer next month. We intuitively grasp linear effort, but exponential growth, that is completely foreign to our human instincts. And that blind spot? That creates what we call the boredom trap. Let's say you've sweated, you've sacrificed, and you finally save up a $5,000 portfolio. You invest it wisely, and it grows at a very healthy 7% over the course of a year. Well, congratulations, you just made exactly $350. I mean, that is a lazy number. It doesn't pay your rent, it won't buy a car, it honestly barely covers a modest grocery run these days. And because the progress feels so dreadfully slow, most people just quit right here. They spend the money, they let that heavy stone roll all the way back down the mountain, and they decide that investing just doesn't work. Which brings us to phase 2, the first 100K grind. Look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Building wealth in these early stages is exactly like sitting in the pitch dark, trying to start a fire by rubbing 2 sticks together. You rub and you rub, your hands are completely raw, and for a very, very long time, there is absolutely no fire. There isn't even smoke. You are literally just holding 2 mildly warm sticks. Which brings us to this perfectly blunt quote from the legendary investor Charlie Munger. He famously said, "The first $100,000 is a total bitch." And you know, he wasn't just being colorful or dramatic there. He was talking about the absolute, literal physics of finance. That sheer heavy grind required when you're starting at zero, where 100% of your wealth has to come entirely from your own physical savings rate. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why it's such a heavy grind. Let's compare 2 different investors. First, we have Alex. Alex has $5,000 to invest. He is a phenomenal investor, pulling in a massive 10% return, which earns him $500 for the year. Then we have Sam. Now, Sam already has $100,000. Sam is a totally mediocre investor, barely scraping out a 5% return. But look at the result. Sam makes $5,000. Even though Alex is literally twice as good at the game, Sam's sheer financial mass physically dominates the math. So we really need to strip away our ego here. When you are below that 100K mark, you cannot optimize your way to wealth with clever stock picks. You simply have to grind. During this phase, you are relying entirely on your behavior and your physical savings rate. You are living in a pure state of delayed gratification. You are making sacrifices today for a version of yourself 30 years in the future, and you're relying entirely on your own willpower to survive the timeline. But that leads us to phase 3, the tipping point. Because if you don't quit, if you keep pushing that heavy stone through the dark, you eventually reach a structural anomaly, a tipping point. This is the exact moment the rules of money fundamentally break and reality shifts from agonizing friction to this feeling of incredible weightlessness. That glitch in the matrix happens at exactly $100,000. This is not just some arbitrary milestone to celebrate with a nice dimmer. No, this is a mathematical boundary line. The exact second you cross this threshold, the game completely shifts. Your money finally stops being something you have to sweat and bleed to work for, and it officially starts working for you. Now, what's really interesting about this is why the magic actually happens at $100,000. It's because of something called investment gravity. At typical index fund growth rates, say 7 to 10%, a $100,000 portfolio generates roughly $7 to $10,000 a year entirely on its own. Now, for the average person, 10 grand is a massive chunk of cash. It often rivals what you can physically save from your paycheck in a single year. You have finally reached the peak of the mountain. The ground levels out, that heavy stone sphere stops fighting you, and financial mass takes over. Because of that mass, we see this absolutely incredible phenomenon, the compression of time. It might take you 10 agonizing years of sheer willpower to save your first 100K, but the second 100K? That only takes 5 years. The third takes 3. By the time you hit your fourth or fifth 100,000, your portfolio's mass is doing 90% of the heavy lifting, and you get to just sit back and steer. You transition from being financially fragile, where a sudden car repair feels like a total life-ruining tragedy, to being completely resilient. But before we get too comfortable, we need to look at phase 4, the lifestyle creep trap. That compression of time sounds absolutely amazing, right? But before we start celebrating, we have to talk about a hidden psychological hurdle that's lying in wait just before you reach the peak. This is the trap that keeps incredibly high earners stuck, pushing that stone forever without ever actually seeing the view from the top. It's called lifestyle creep. As humans, we are desperately wired for social signaling. When you work a high-stress job and you start making good money, your brain demands that your outward appearance matches your inward effort. You start feeling like you deserve the nice car or the better apartment, or you start buying expensive dinners just to impress people you don't even really like. But giving into this urge just means your expenses rise to perfectly meet your new income. You haven't escaped the treadmill at all. Actually, scratch that. You've simply traded your small, heavy stone for a much bigger, shinier one. The absolutely crucial point here is understanding the ultimate trade-off, the status of possessions versus the mass of a portfolio. To hit your first 100K, you have to be totally okay with being the person driving the boring car with the old phone. Because when you spend $500 on a status symbol today, just to impress people, you aren't just losing $500. You are violently stealing the $5,000 that money would have become from your future self. Which brings us to our final phase, hitting escape velocity. Let's move to and see how this builds into a practical strategy. How do we actually avoid the middle-class trap and achieve that beautiful, frictionless weightlessness? Well, here are the concrete rules for your survival guide. Step 1, widen the gap. In the beginning, you just have to feed the money monster. Cut your big expenses, maybe start a side hustle. Just create physical, mathematical space between what you earn and what you spent. Step 2, ignore the scoreboard. Remember those 2 sticks we talked about earlier? You have to accept the boredom. If you watch your index funds every single day, the volatility is just going to discourage you. Focus on the rubbing, not the fire. And finally, step 3, automate the wealth. Humans are incredibly emotional creatures, so take yourself entirely out of the equation. Automate your transfers for the exact day your paycheck hits. That way, you never even see the money and your emotions don't get the chance to ruin the math. Once you put these steps into motion, you're going to realize something pretty profound. Money isn't actually for buying things. Money is for buying time and freedom. Reaching 100K is not the finish line, it's the starting gun. It is the exact moment you stop being a slave to your paycheck and officially become a master of your capital. It unlocks a completely different game. Which leaves us with the ultimate question. The physics of finance guarantee that if you just keep pushing that agonizingly heavy basalt sphere long enough, you will reach the peak. The stone absolutely will start moving on its own. But when does your real life begin? Are you willing to embrace the boring, unglamorous grind today so the math can completely take over tomorrow? Keep pushing that stone, guys. The view from the top is absolutely worth it. Thanks so much for learning with me today on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.